See these things, okay. My new manuscript I'm working on is called Off Kilter, although it's has other titles as well at the moment, so the title isn't set. I'm very bad at titles. But it has to do when life really throws you something, like that curveball. So this happened many, many decades ago, but it really affected my relationship with my family, and especially my daughter, who was 8 at the time. So I'm going to start by reading a few poems about that time. The first poem is called 18 Seconds, and it is because I read that physicians interrupt patients within 18 seconds of telling their story. So next time you go time yourself, you have 17 and a half seconds to get out what you need to. I want to go back to that chair, to the intimation light through the blinds. I want to edit my medical file. I want it to be known how Dr. X hijacked my story, made it his. I want to tell how words migrate into sentences where they do not belong, how vertigo and I lie down knuckle to knuckle. I want to explain how at the exhibit of Aborigine art, pinpoints of color lit up and I joined them. Cloistered in my study, I read Anne Carson's Knox, an elegy for her brother. Each time I read, I turn the page, nod, her story corroborates my own. I want to say yes, it was like that for a long while. I throw out Aristotle and his spent plotline, beginning, middle, and end. I know in the Chaos narrative that the beginning and ending may collide in the middle. The climax occur at any time. Pages come unglued from their spine. Oh, stop there. I'm going to go on to this poem. I called it The Fifth Season, because when I was so sick for several years, it was like I'm living in another season here. Okay. There we go, the fifth season. The disease ripens as if a fifth season had erupted. The fatigue follows you, my daughter, into your teens. You want to know, isn't there a vaccine? We laugh as you share our tale for college entrance. We counter-story, not to let this fifth season put a wedge between us. I essay to be better company, but you stop me. When we go into a mall, you look like you're going into a war zone, Mom. I adjust to being alone. Your lively bones jaunt around the planet. You plant yourself home on vacations, well plotted not to tire out Mom. Guilt catapults into my arms. When I practice child's pose, you're sent into childhood panic. You request a pudding snack, comfort on the late night of an argument, anger tucked in bed in your tiny fists. In California, jacaranda purple haloed your hair. In Philadelphia, weeping cherry blossoms spilled on the stone steps of winter. On the tilt of a hill where Dad taught you about hill horses, you somersaulted. Near the horizon, Orion and Great Bear tickled your fingertips. Like antennas, your fingers sense deeply into the earth. My daughter, my blueberry who slipped into the world full face, I first dreamt you as an owl. Your soft auburn feathers and green owl eyes spanned the night. Your talons bore through the barn door frame until you were ready to vanish. Oh, you don't have to do that. That's okay. Okay. Before all this happened, we lived out east then in Philly and always went up to the Adirondacks. And I just loved the Adirondacks. So this is Ode to Wood Paths, which are in the Adirondacks. I miss roaming the ruckus of woods, ferreting out uprooted tree trunks, the flavorful paths and scented sunlight. I miss the soft raisin of pine needles, dried and brown, harsh and tingly under bare feet, that rude sharpness of a twig snapping my face, the forest's mood swings. Rutke said writing poetry is like driving in a snowstorm at night. Focus on the few feet lit in the headlights. I focus on the tangle of fungal threads. Spotlight the roots of trees that reveal their flawed openings, threads dangling. I balance on fallen tree trunks, wobble on volatile logs, hum a slight dance my feet follow. I come upon a narrow passage, alert to cliffs, their edges. From within deep trunks, creaks, and rustles, I tell them, sing, it is safe. I have come to listen. Yeah, we like the Adirondacks, don't we? Yes. Too much clapping makes me weird. Okay. That's okay. Yeah, you can wait till the end. That's okay. This is called Waiting Room. We know a lot of life is waiting, isn't it? Just waiting to grow up, and then you're grown up, and then you're waiting for many other things. So this was Waiting Room. Earlier today, when I opened my eyes after falling, my 10-year-old daughter was staring eye level, hoping I would get up and provide smiling snacks. When opening the freezer for ice cream, my husband retrieves my lost key and pen. Maneuvering the flagstone terrace, I blurt, look at the scallion, when I mean, look at the lizard. My family laughs. Shame flies overhead, mocking my short shadow. Vertigo has ganged up on my family. Conman plays his shell game in the null space. His poker face hands me a man-sized Kleenex. Now I sit among hardback armchairs, thumb through magazines, health tips on the monitor, and a nurse who never has lost her temper. Although I have lost mine, impatient and afraid, asked to wait a moment when the moment wrinkled into the second dimension and I couldn't breathe. At last, the door opens. I lower the shade. 3 diagnoses, none. I persuade my neurologist. We sleep the unsleep. Riddle this dragon home. Because sometimes you never get a diagnosis, right? Never get it. Well, I'm going to read this poem. It's called Self-Portrait at 50, but I didn't write it when I was 50, but it sounded better than 60. Because 50, you have more time afterwards. So I love poetry that way. You can just change a few things and you feel a lot better. Yeah. So it's Self-Portrait at 50, maybe 40, Self-Portrait at 45, at 50. Across the open Dutch door, I lean towards my former self. Her young fingers fold over the half door as if we are neighbors greeting each other over a borrowed cup of milk. In the future, we may pass each other and wonder, is blue still your favorite color? Have we crossed paths before? Perhaps we'll remain distant cousins who otherwise have nothing in common. And the last poem I'm going to read from this group, it's called The Appointment, because every once in a while you find a doctor who's human, and that little moment is so meaningful. So
18 seconds.
That's here's my 18 seconds. All summer I wait to see the new neurologist. Across his wide desk, the neat piles of files. Compassion fatigue lines his eyes. He leans towards me and says, I'm sorry, my wife has it too. Then stands, all doctor again, but the office lights had shifted to a soft white, as if we had met under a weeping cherry tree, pink petals drifting around us, a spot for a bit of shade in sheer sunlight, a bit of this sweet water. Yeah, that's a nice one. Okay. I don't want to read that one. Okay, we're going faster here. Good. This is good. All right. Oh, I do want to read this poem for Nico. I used to teach movement, and to get the boys coming, 4 to 6-year-olds, we called it mime, and they came. You know, they didn't come to dance, they came to mime. But there was a boy who I really liked. He was so amazing, and his mother had MS, and she was in a wheelchair, and he was only 5. So she actually put him in the class because he wasn't really running around like a 5-year-old should be. And the most amazing thing for him was by the end of the semester, as you'll see, he actually got to balance on a balance beam. There's a whole poem. But anyway, I'll read it. Okay. But it's called Nico and the Beam. That was not his name. Children are protected. Nico, you were 5 when we met. Your mother wheelchaired with MS. She'd brought you to my drama class because, unlike other boys who preferred walking the 5-foot ledge along the street, you preferred the sidewalk squares, wouldn't teeter on a scooter or run headstrong into the park. You clowned with scarves and mimed moving water, seahorse grateful, but each time you neared the beam, you stalled, sagged against the wall. You'd watch with your whole body. Several weeks later, you crept towards the balance beam as if a cat sniffing out danger, and at last, squeezing my fingers hard, stood 5 feet in the air. At the end of semester, you solo stepped from end to end, your mother waist high and proud. It's really meaningful to do stuff like that, you know? And Phil did mention that I really do like to help people tell their stories, etc. And this may not be a poem, but you know, I like it, so I've got to listen to it. But it was when I worked in assisted living, and I sort of put a composite picture in, because people say the most amazing things. And that moment of awareness that comes for the whole group, it just made my day. It was better than teaching when I have to grade students. We were there just to really have a moment of enjoyment, and that's really what life is about. So writing group, assisted living. Write that I was here where words unwing, 10 a.m. Friday, in this room, our forgettery, where memories for a moment might return to us. Lily leans, her ear cocked towards the other side of the table. When my sister died, she stole my childhood. She's the only one I could say to, remember? Words alibi me. Leah blows on her paper to make sure the words won't blow off the page. Read it aloud, she says. I read, Spirit Lake, wet ponderosa, smells like vanilla butterscotch, lots and lots of mist. She says, oh, I can taste the buttermint. The words taste like buttermint. We savor the redolent room. I ask my question, what do poets attempt to do? Liesl says, we're like birds trapped in cages here trying to sing. By painting and writing, you help us sing like a bird. Vanessa says, I'm trying to find my voice because I don't speak much during the day. We have no one to talk to, so you try to open our beaks, our mouths, and help us talk. Lupe chimes in. Let's say the building is the birdhouse. We are the birds. In this room, we try to sing the way we used to sing when we were younger, healthier. Metaphor is our intimacy, a received invitation to a word raising like a barn raising, where the collective gathers, ensuring each word's place in the listening universe. And I'm gonna, oh no, time goes so fast. One last poem from this section, because it's for my daughter, so I have to say that. Growing up, she said, Mom, you only write about dead trees and dead people, so is that why you don't write about me? And she'd say, write about me, and I always avoided writing about her, because I've heard other people tell me, don't write about the kids, they really resent it. But anyway, so now I have a poem for her. In this poem, she's 4 years old. Oh, and one more thing, her name is Miriam, and when she was 8 weeks old and in her little rocker room, my mother was there and said, how did you give her such an ugly name? So I reminded my mother that because I taught, I had so many associations with so many names, I had to find one I had no association with. And it was Miriam, and Miriam in the Bible is the one who goes out into the desert and finds water. So I said, there you go. My daughter, your job is to push one swing, then the other, faster, back and forth. Your 4-year-old feet scrambling like an engineer's to keep the trains running. Later, I find you at the grandiose marble run, balls tumbling down one tube into another, arms folded in contemplation, mesmerized by the kinetic balance of falling balls. The dream of music lays its geography within you. The rhythms and melodies will gather like clouds in a sky. One day you will bring out the joy of being Miriam, the one who danced in the desert, the one knowing where you are on a journey, bring a tambourine. Yeah. Okay, that's that. Oh, I have a few more minutes? Where's Phil? Oh, there you are. Okay, good. A few more minutes. I want to read a poem called Moon. It's had an interesting life. People have asked me for this poem, and I'm happy to give it to them. It's an older poem, but it's a love poem for him right there. So there you go. So I told him I'd read it tonight. Moon. You might say that the moon opens itself like a white fan over our hot nights, or that in the cloud is the gesture of a hand, or that a hand reaches out of the moon to touch us, or that on cold nights you can see the breath of the moon, or that on cloudy nights you can see her sleep and follow the movements of her body as she turns in bed. In our sleep, we turn to each other or away. We turn to the child or the old person in us. We think of sleep as something soft and strong, as someone who pushes a woman through the sturdy wind to her house, the woman thin, delicate. Sometimes when I study the moon, I am looking into the white water rapids where we capsized. After 10 years having steered past those rocks, we've stopped jostling one another, can lie together able to comment on nothing but the moon. Its white shadow lengthens out over our bodies. One day someone we love shall see within the moon a piece of us. She will say, the moon is a piece of their bone, and the cloud is their flesh. One is constantly looking for the other, roaming over the fields where they first slept together. So, I read that for you. And everyone thinks my father knew the artist Miro because I called the book My Father and Miro. But in our family, we did like art, and he had Parkinson's. This is a long time ago, and he would sit there with a book of art on his lap, and it happened to be the Moreau Prince. And it was even hard to turn the pages, but somehow I was out there for 10 days to take care of him, and I'm not a good daughter. I was 10 days out of like 4 years, so. But I was there then. And we got to know each other in a different way. My father and Miro. My father has disappeared into the Emerald Necklace of Ohio, where for years he has sat in a small room in a townhouse beside a great forest, trying to find out when people come and go, trying to turn off his portable radio, trying to reason with his checkbook. He has disappeared into the worn purple velvet armchair from his first marriage, into the Midwest of his second marriage. Once in a while, his eyes sparkle. Oh, I get the joke. But most of the time, my father, in the farthest reaches of the house, is waiting for someone to fetch him. Yeah. Is that enough? Is that enough to read? One more. Oh, goody. One more. Here we go. This poem is from a manuscript called Ostia and Me, because Ostia was my wonderful grandmother, and I was close to be able to be close to her. I mean, it was just fabulous. And she was Russian, and she would take me traveling. So this happened when I was 12, and she was failing a little bit. But anyway, red blouse and ushio. I run an errand returning something you had borrowed. I knock on the door you describe. An older man with slobbering lips invites me into the room. Yuck. Turning to reach behind him while muttering Italian. He grabs me, forcing the buttons of my red and white checked blouse. A blouse I would never remember otherwise. I freeze. I utter the only Italian I know. Mia abuelita, mia abuelita. Suddenly charged, I draw back and run until you find me. You and he exchange harsh words in a language foreign to me, but I understand. You, the force that has protected me against chaos, the buttress against bad things, are losing your power, which is why we find ourselves at this health spa. Each morning you drink an herbal concoction that smells ferocious. While you swing from doctors to colonics, I lose myself among the stretch of paths that cut, twisting through the promontory, overlooking the breathing sea. I remember uninterrupted cliffs, crazy with wildflowers, red blooms staring up. Your systems had begun to fail. I saw death happen in sputters. I fall over a stubby root. The sky folds in thirds, then quarters, then eighths in its misty layers. Burnt peach brush fire in the sky shadows the mountain in pink rust. I hold these vibrant colors in my hand, wishing you fire and strength. So thank you.